Good evening, all. So we have come back with a very interesting topic about thought, ideology, and philosophy. What are the main frameworks of thinking that govern people behavior and people social interactions? How they think about the world, and what are the big ideas that affect their lives? This will be the topic of this talk, regardless whether you are coming from a liberal background, secular background, religious background. Today talk is about thinking about thought and how we can create thought. So there were a lot of people who have influenced the current thoughts of the world. And if I want to talk about the history, we have the Greek philosophers and we have the European philosophers who has done great work in these areas, and we have some work from very famous Islamic scholars, and we also do have some work from different people across the globe. But the most famous groups, I think, the Islamic group, and you have this European philosophers and Greek philosophers. They thought about how we organize our life and what is the best way for human beings to achieve their happiness. What do we know about the truth and how we can understand the truth? How we can create a just society, and how we can create a society that preserve its wealth? What are the economical models that should be contributed to this society? What is justice? What is equality? What is rights? What is human rights? And what is democracy, what is autocracy, and so on. There was a lot of ideas and a lot of thoughts. What are the rights of the individuals and how human beings can live with each other? What is the relationship between the individual and the state? What is the relationship between the individual and the other individual? And what is the relationship between different groups? And so on. So there was a lot of thought coming to discuss these issues, these big questions, the big questions that control people's behavior and affect their rights and affect writing laws. These big thoughts that is highly influenced by morality, is highly influenced by knowledge, is highly influenced by science, is highly influenced by technology. And sometimes I think our region needs some people to rebuild the ideology again, build some kind of new frameworks for people of thought, give new thought to people so they can learn about new aspects of the world. However, I also do think that sometimes in Europe, there should be some new thoughts that can govern the new aspects of things like globalization, things like economical conditions and the change of the world, things like innovation and technology, things like global governance and global leadership, things like multiculturalism, and things like about racism and discrimination. Definitely, that's a very big one, and there should be a lot of thought about this. I think our region really needs a lot of people who think about the interaction technology and the current interaction. So the region, let me say the Arab region, so at one point in time, they were the influential empire in the world. Then they have declined, and they have a great heritage, and they want to renew this heritage in order to bring back their power to the world. And I think they should be thinking that the world has changed. It's not only groups fighting each other. Maybe we have a possibility of groups between competition and cooperation, compete on certain area and cooperate on others, and so on. So, but what I think our region needs the most is establishing a very strong philosophical frameworks about how we deal with different opinions, how we deal with people who are coming from completely different backgrounds, completely different social backgrounds. And we see issues like coming to Europe associated with this because of immigration and multiculturalism. So some people think about their identity, the identity of an immigrant, the identity of the second generation immigrants in Europe, and so on. So these people sometimes are influenced by two big thoughts. They are influenced by the European school of thoughts, and they are influenced by the Islamic school of thoughts, or even other school of thoughts that are coming from China, Asia, or the Eastern nations. And they want to live in a global dynamic environment where global workforce mobility moves along. So it's about what are the rights they can get, what are the differences, how we can deal with them if they have a completely different set of values, or if they have some kind of values that contradict our values. When this differences is completely not acceptable, when this differences is acceptable, what are the actions that should be taken in a state of differences between different people. So that's the first one. The second one actually is influenced by the European Union. So the European Union is an attempt to create a bigger Europe, a Europe that is more integrated, a Europe that is strong, a Europe that have its place in the world. However, we have seen a very strong movements happening across Europe, a little bit thinking about that the governance, the current government structure of Europe is not suitable for the coming decades. It can make Europe weaker. So the argument is the European Union will create a much bigger market, will create more security, will create more integrity, will provide people with more rights, and will provide some level of more economical specialization. So you can become highly specialized because the market is bigger. But there is another thought there that people say, we lose the government structure, we lose we lose our touch with our politicians, we lose our. It's a noble idea, but that does not work in our current times. There is an argument that say actually it does not make us more secure. It somehow it can be making us more vulnerable. Sometimes they say it does not lead to let me say to a better governance. There is a lot of regulations that sometimes can impede businesses and can affect our economical livability. So that there is a very strong discussion about governance, government and regulations in the European Union, and what is the vision of the European Union. So I do think there is a chance for building some new visions and some new frameworks that can be helpful for the future, because there is a belief that sometimes the European Union might not stand in a changing and dynamic world where you have a rise of China, and so on. I don't have a clear opinion on this thought, but an ever closer union. What does an ever closer union mean? And how we can overcome national identities to think about the continent identity or the European identity, and how you think about yourself. Are you Italian first, or you are a European first? Are you a European? Are you an Italian immigrant, or you are a European immigrant trying to live in Italy? So, or maybe are you? Let me say, are you? So these kinds of identity question, these kinds of the vision, these kinds of what kind of regulations would affect me if I did not have a touch, if the problems I have in my city or my country are completely different than the problems that is being in another place in Europe. So yes, I do think there should be some kind of new thoughts on identity and new thoughts. What does it mean to be Muslim, Italian, European, or but human, or how does the identity comes first? What kind of interest you would be trying to push, and how you develop your identity? What are the competing thoughts on identity, and why we think one thought has more morale or has more interest than the other thought? What kind of school frameworks will make us happier, will make us have a better interest in the world, and so on? So this kind of thoughts, I think, What kind of economical policies should we consider? Is the environment economical policies is the one, while some people, some countries in the world are not interested? So I think just rebuilding and rethinking and raising the questions again can be very helpful and can be very engaging, which might lead to solving some of the current conflicts between the thought world and the real world, because there is a very strong confrontation that we have seen it in so many parts coming across countries. That was my talk for tonight. I wish you a great evening, and I shall say salam.